Hi, I'm Bob Kutschbach, the owner and broker of Carleton Realty. And today's topic is a real estate closing. The closing meaning the purchase or sale of your home. And the real estate closing is typically, at least in our area, conducted in a title company. A title company or escrow agent is one that handles all the paperwork. Now technically, the escrow agent or title company doesn't represent either side. So you should not take advice, legal advice for example, from the title company. They're supposed to be neutral. So the buyer, in preparing for the real estate closing, needs to remember a number of things. To not do anything involving their credit before the closing. Don't pay off any credit cards, don't refinance your car loan, don't go out and buy a car or furniture 90 days same as cash, because the day of closing, the lender will pull your credit report and the closing will be called off. So remember not to do anything that would affect your credit. Probably the most important thing in preparing for a closing on a buyer side is your driver's license. You'll need to bring your driver's licenses to prove who you are. If you don't have a driver's license, then a state ID or other form of identification will be required. In the state of Ohio, if you're married, you need to bring your spouse. Ohio is one of the few states left that has dower, meaning a married person cannot sell their property without their spouse's consent. So the spouse will have to sign off their dower. Now, if it's inconvenient to bring your spouse or inconvenient for you to come at a particular time, the title company is usually flexible and can close at various times. But most lenders require a buyer to be there in person on the day of closing. So it's not that you can pre-sign when it comes to most lenders. There also may be closing requirements set down by the lender. For example, they may want your most recent pay stub, or they may want a copy of your credit card bill showing that you paid off a certain amount as directed by the lender. So be sure that you bring any of the paperwork to closing that the lender has required. The real estate agents are responsible for doing most of the other paperwork. For example, if there's a home warranty involved in this closing, the real estate agents will provide that information to the title company. The title company may ask for an original copy of things like a form of divorce decree, or a copy of a power of attorney, or a copy of a trust. So if this is being sold by someone other than the owner, by a fiduciary, a trustee, a guardian, an executor, there are legal documents, originals, that they will need to have and probably record. Other than that, on the buyer side, there's not much else to worry about. On the seller side, there's even less to worry about. Number one is the driver's licenses. Number two is the spouse. Again, if you're selling a property and the seller is married, the spouse will have to sign off their dower. Now on the seller side, much of this can be done in advance. So if the seller will be out of town or their spouse will be out of town, oftentimes these items can be pre-signed by the seller, whereas the bank usually will not let a buyer pre-sign. They will let a seller pre-sign. And there may be a few other documents that are requested, but not very often. The seller will also be asked to sign an affidavit stating that there has been no work on the property, nothing that would cause a lien against the property that would cloud the title for the new buyer. So there are documents to be signed, as well as the deed. The seller will have to sign the deed, and of course the buyer will have to sign the note and the mortgage if they're getting a mortgage from a lender. These documents will be notarized at the closing table, typically by the closing officer, who usually is a notary, or someone else at the title company who is a notary. So the law requires that the note, the mortgage, and the deed be acknowledged, that's the legal word, sworn by the buyer and seller that they were signed not under duress, and notarized by a third party. Now, this is one of the times at a closing where it might seem funny to make a joke, but it's not. When the notary asks, was the signing of these documents of your own free and voluntary act, you must answer, yes, it was. If you try to make a joke about somebody else talking you into it, that actually requires the notary to void the documents you've just signed. So this is the point in the closing where there are no jokes allowed. You must answer to the affirmative, yes, I signed these documents of my own free will and accord. The closing should take less than an hour in most cases, oftentimes much shorter than that. And after the closing, the only thing left typically is transferring the keys. Now, in our market, there's a lot of delayed possession, where the seller gets a day or 2 or 3 to move out, maybe even more. And then the keys will be delivered to the buyer. The last thing that the agents need to address is how to transfer the keys, who will pick them up and who will deliver them to the buyer. After this, it's party time. The transaction's over, the seller has sold their house, the buyer's bought their new house, and it's time for everybody to celebrate. And let your real estate agent be part of that celebration, because they had a hand in it too. Thank you so much for watching. For more information, visit us online at carletonrealty.com or call our office at 614-891-0000.